And today we are here with Ted and Garrett Sutton. Ted is a licensed attorney in Wyoming and Nevada that shifted from a mining engineer background to law after discovering his passion for legal matters during an internship in Chile. Following in his father's footsteps, Ted now focuses on helping clients form businesses and protect their assets without the need for court appearances. We're also joined by Garrett, in which is a rich dad, poor dad advisor for Robert Kiyosaki, and most importantly, is a key figure in the father-son partnership. Without further ado, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep,
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, yeah. So I was planning for Ted to be on, but Garrett joined us as well. So it looks like we're definitely in for a double treat today, and so. I'm really intrigued by the subject matter. I don't know a ton about what it is that you guys are doing, but it sounds like you're really offering a great service to protect investors and their assets and their properties and their businesses. And so before we get into those details, if you guys can just share a little bit more about yourself and also how you got started in the business that you're in.
Well, I went to law school in the Bay Area and decided to move to Nevada many years ago. And Nevada is a great state for setting up corporations and LLCs. They have the best asset protection laws along with Wyoming and Delaware. These three states compete against each other to have the best laws, which is good for us. And, I just always enjoyed the idea of helping my clients protect their assets. And so eventually I just solely focused on setting up and maintaining LLCs and corporations. I wrote this book in the Rich Dad Advisor series, Start Your Own Corporation. I've written a number of other books in that series. And so, for the last 20 plus years, I've been working on protecting people's assets. When you buy a duplex, if you hold it in your individual name and a tenant sues, they can get the equity in the duplex plus all of your other assets. And so we want to have that duplex held by an LLC so that if you get sued, they can get what's inside the LLC, but they can't get beyond the LLC to your personal assets. And so that's what asset protection is setting up a structure and putting your assets behind it. Now, the federal government just in the last year, Eric, has gotten involved and they want more information about LLCs and corporations. And this new law is called the Corporate Transparency Act. And Ted has been specializing in it. So I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself as well as the work that we're doing on the Corporate Transparency Act, because your listeners should know this. If they don't file, the penalties are $10,000 and or 2 years in jail. So it's pretty serious, this new law. So go ahead, Ted.
That's right. So I'm Ted Sutton. I'm Garrett's son. He was born in California, moved up here, met my mom. And I've been born and raised here in Reno, Nevada. So, you see a map of Reno from 1959 behind me. That was before when I was born. I think Dad was alive. I don't want to harp on his age too much here. But, I grew up in Reno, went to college in Utah, got my degree in mining engineering. But I realized that wasn't necessarily the career path for me. So I went to law school in Wyoming, which is a great state to set up LLCs. It kind of killed two birds with one stone. It's a great place for mining, but also for corporate law as well. After working with my dad, I decided to take the corporate law route, and just help people set up businesses, protect their assets, and help them with all these filings that we're doing. So graduated law school 2 years ago, took the Wyoming bar, took the Nevada bar, and then now in the past year, I got licensed in Texas. And so the past 2 years have been really interesting, just getting my feet wet, learning the ropes of the business here at Corporate Direct. And the main thing that I've done is I've really specialized on Corporate Transparency Act compliance. It's that new law that carries really steep penalties. And it's just been really interesting learning about that. And at the end of the day, people need to know about it because the government and the media aren't talking about it. And that's really a travesty because it does carry really steep penalties, which we'll talk about.
So it sounds like that act, it came with the Biden administration then, or was this something that was coming down the pike a little bit even prior to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Corporate Transparency Act was actually passed in the last few weeks of Trump's presidency. So there was one of these big spending bills that came in 2020, and eventually it got passed in 2021. But Trump vetoed it, and then Congress overrode it by a 2/3 majority. And so this was January 1st of 2021. So this was right before Trump left office and Biden took over. So it was passed several years ago. It did, believe it or not, have bipartisan support. But it's the most significant corporate law that's been passed in the last 40 years, and it's going to carry some really steep consequences for business owners all across the country.
Okay. And for most real estate investors, we normally utilize the insurance to protect ourselves from lawsuits and things like that. But it sounds like you guys have come up with a really interesting way to structure LLCs and to have some protection or some insulation to help the investor out. Why is it better to go with an LLC?
Insurance is always the first line of defense. We want to make sure that you have insurance for that rental property that you have. But, the insurance companies don't cover every claim. They have an incentive to not cover every claim. And so the insurance company can deny coverage, or you can have a significant claim brought against you and the insurance monies aren't enough. So you need the second line of defense, which are these LLCs. And you set up an LLC in the state where the property is located, and you need to transfer title from your name into the name of the LLC. It's not enough to just set up the LLC. You have to transfer title from your name into the name of the LLC. So when you go to the county recorder, it doesn't say Eric Lindsay is the owner. It says Eric Lindsay's LLC as the owner. And then you have the protection. Now, we like to have the LLC in the state where the property is located, but then we like for even better protection for your state holding LLC to be owned by a Wyoming LLC. And that gives you the excellent asset protection if you get sued in a car wreck. A car wreck has nothing to do with the rental real estate, but someone's trying to get at your assets. And the asset you own is the Wyoming LLC that owns the other title holding LLCs. And with Wyoming law, the exclusive remedy is called the charging order, which is a lien on distributions, meaning they can't barge in like they can with a California LLC and force a sale of all the assets. With the charging order, it's just a lien on distribution. So the attorney suing you can't barge in and sell the real estate. They have to wait until distributions are made. Well, attorneys are on a contingency fee. They don't want to wait around and monitor distributions. So they tend to leave you alone on these Wyoming LLCs. So a combination of insurance in the name of the LLC that holds title, and then these LLCs that offer asset protection is a good way to go. And I wrote this book, Eric, as part of the Rich Dad series called Loopholes of Real Estate. And this book covers everything we're talking about here. How to use LLCs for strategic and tactical reasons.
Okay. And so I've heard of this similar process. A lot of guys, they get into these trusts and they try to position that that's the way to go rather than having things tied up in the LLC. Have you guys heard of that method, or are you fans of it, or is that something that you would really highly not advise?
Well, there are two types of trusts. So the first type is called the living trust, or the revocable trust. And that provides no asset protection. So you would want to have, we mentioned the Wyoming Holding LLC for asset protection. That could be owned by a living trust, which avoids probate. The other trust is the irrevocable trust, which can be used to hold real estate. They're expensive. They're expensive trustee fees. It's irrevocable. You're not supposed to change it. With the LLC, you have much more flexibility. You're able to change the terms of it, and you still have the asset protection. But I would caution your listeners, Eric, to be very careful when promoters say that you hold real estate in a living trust, that it provides asset protection. It does not. So there are too many promoters out there misstating the law. When it comes to holding title to real estate, you really want an LLC.
Okay, that's really good information, because it's a lot of thought leaders out there, and they really push the narrative to put your property within a trust because you can have anonymity, you can be protected against lawsuits, etc. And it also provides a great way to distribute the property, and somewhat go around the probate system. So that's interesting that you're sharing this about the LLCs.
Yeah, the LLC owned by the living trust is a great way to go. You have the asset protection with the LLC, the probate avoidance with the living trust. But the living trust does not provide asset protection. So you just have to be careful of who you listen to.
Okay. And as investors, you run across all kind of different scenarios. I do personally know of quite a few investors. They swear by doing their own LLCs themselves. What are some landmines in doing that? And what's some things that someone could be able to do and get away with?
Yeah. So when it comes to forming an LLC, there's a lot of services out there. They only file your articles of organization. They be your registered agent. And that's pretty much it. When it comes to setting up an LLC properly, there are additional steps that you need to take. You need to make sure that you have an EIN number from the IRS. You also need to make sure that you use a separate business bank account for your LLC. And another important thing to have is an operating agreement. So that's the agreement that just governs how the LLC is going to be taxed. It governs voting, what happens when a dispute arises. So, there's a lot of people out there who just do the bare minimum to set up the LLC, and they think they'll be protected. But in reality, there's a lot of additional steps that you need to take in order to make sure that your LLC and the assets held inside of it are properly protected. If not, it's very easy for that claimant. So, just to provide an example, if you have a rental property, titles in an LLC, and the tenant were to trip and fall and sue the LLC, if you only do the bare minimum, it'd be very easy for them to pierce the corporate veil to hold you as the owner individually liable. So, the biggest mistake is that people don't do enough to set up the LLC. And on top of that, they don't treat the LLC as a separate entity, separate and apart from themselves. So, if you go the extra mile and, do everything you need to do to show that there's a separation between you and your LLC, then you'll be fine. But there's a lot of people out there who unfortunately skip that step.
Well, Eric, also, you have these ongoing formalities. You've got to pay the state. You've got to have annual meetings. And if you don't, people can pierce the veil, as Ted mentions, and go through the LLC to get at your personal assets. 50% of the time, when people pierce the veil, they get through to the individual. In half of all cases, people are not following the formalities, and they're having their personal assets exposed. 50% is a huge number. And so that just shows you that not enough people are following these formalities. And part of it is that, like you mentioned, Eric, people think, oh, it's easy, I can do it online, but they don't get the complete service that you need, and they don't follow the annual formalities that are a continuing obligation. And so they lose everything. So you've set up the LLC to stay protected, but you don't follow these ongoing rules and you lose it all.
Yeah, this is great information because so many times LLCs are so common that you really don't think about the depths of it. You really just think about it as, I'm forming a business. I have to have an LLC, so let me get it out the way. But you guys are really spelling things out in a lot more detail and showing that there's a lot more implications that go into these LLCs and a lot more protection along the way as well. So that's really great information. So if a person did decide to reach out to you guys, what does that process look like? And how do people begin to reach out and start the process of working with you guys?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us by going to corporatedirect.com. We have a lot of free information there, with regards to business formation, asset protection, things of that nature. And then you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with one of our incorporating specialists. They're very well versed in corporate law. Our specialty is in real estate investing. And so, if you want to get started, you can start there. But when it comes to the timing, I would say it would make sense to reach out to us a month or two before you buy the rental property. And the reason being is that sometimes states are a little bit slower to get the LLC set up. There are people who reach out like a week ahead of time saying, oh, no, this property is going to close. I need the LLC right now. And unfortunately, that may not be the case. So when it comes to the timing to reach out to us, I would definitely say do it at least a month in advance.
Okay. And when they do decide to reach out to you a month in advance, are they needing to have any basic documents ready to go for you guys, EIN numbers, or you guys cover the EIN? I'm pretty sure about that, but maybe bank accounts or okay.
Yeah, we have a package. So when you talk to us, we'll send you a quote. We'll tell you what it costs for our services for the complete package and what it costs for the state filing fee, because each state has its own different filing fee. But we'll get you a quote right away. And if you need to get that LLC done, we can get to it right away. Now, there's one thing to mention, Eric, and that is on the Corporate Transparency Act. If you have an LLC that was set up last year, you have to get this information to the federal government by December 31st. And there are only a few exceptions. So if your listeners own a duplex or a fourplex in an LLC, they need to make this filing with the federal government by December 31st. Now, I wouldn't wait that long. There's going to be a crush in December of people trying to file. And I would get this done much earlier than December. We're providing a service. We charge $250 to make the filing. And it's important to know, Eric, that there are ongoing obligations with the Corporate Transparency Act filing. So if you bring on a new owner, if you bring on a new manager, if you get a new driver's license or passport, you have to update this information. And we're keeping a database together so we can notify our clients of deadlines they have to make to keep their Corporate Transparency Act filing current. Because again, it's a $10,000 2-year in jail penalty. And we don't want our clients to go through that.
Hey, one last thing before I let you guys go. Does things change up any with syndications or joint ventures? If you're raising capital, is there anything that we should be aware of pertaining to LLCs?
Yes. So with the Corporate Transparency Act, this year, if you file, you have 90 days to file it. So a 2024 entity, you've got 90 days to file the report. next year, 2025, you've only got 30 days to file it. And so in a syndication, you're not going to know who the owners are in 30 days. So what you have to do is file the first report within 30 days. And then when you bring in more investors, you have to update that report. So there's a lot of ongoing requirements here.
Yeah, well, this has definitely been informative, and you guys are doing a great job at protecting investors and informing, educating us about the nuances that LLCs carry with them, and also the protection that's involved. So, Ted, Garrett, we definitely appreciate you guys dropping by today, and we'd love to have you guys back anytime.
Anytime, Eric.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us on, Eric.